Denver goes back to take another Ohio State player here with Jonathan Cooper going in the 7th round. Just a few picks near the end of the draft after he notched 15 tackles for loss and 10 sacks. And his career, of course, with the Buckeyes goes all the way back to 2016.
This was one of my favorite guys to cover during his time at Ohio State. Just great personality, obviously a good player, was probably consistently overshadowed by other defensive ends that Ohio State had, Nick Bosa, Chase Young. I mean, even Sam Hubbard, Tyquan Lewis during his first couple of years at Ohio State. So I don't know if he ever quite lived up to I think he was the 3rd ranked weak side defensive end in the country coming out of high school. But, a guy that loved the Buckeyes, he's a local kid, was just a lot of fun to cover. So as he's not getting picked, I think 2 long snappers ahead of him, I'm kind of scratching my head a little bit because he is a good player and whatnot. So I'm happy to see that he did get drafted. It looked like for a while maybe he would be an undrafted free agent. He'll join Baron Browning and a few other guys out in Denver. So a nice little Buckeye contingent kind of developing out there. And Jonathan Cooper, I think, will help add to that.
And it's always interesting for those that focus strictly in college football to see the star power not necessarily translate or the productivity not necessarily translate, because, of course, the NFL is looking for those things, certainly the productivity on tape, but you factor in everything else that they like or dislike about particular profiles, measurables off the field that have to do with size and speed and quickness and space and those sorts of things. And it doesn't necessarily, again, translate to what we thought of those players and their productivity at the college ranks. Pat Murphy joining us to talk Ohio State football. In regards to the undrafted free agents, there's a number of them. You can pick and choose as you will, just in regards to their readiness for the next level and who may stand out.
Yeah, Justin Hilliard's the one for me out of the guys who signed from Ohio State. A linebacker who was a 5-star kid coming out of high school. You talk about Jonathan Cooper being here since 2016. Hilliard goes back even a year further than that. Injuries after injuries, 2 bicep tears in back-to-back years, had an Achilles injury, finally kind of got going for Ohio State these last couple of years. And, another kid who was a lot of fun to cover, never gave up, always, had this dream of being in the NFL. It's unfortunate that you didn't hear his name called, but he's a guy I think can go in, ended up with the 49ers. So he'll hot out there with Trey Sermon. He's a guy I think could go in and surprise some people. I don't know if he becomes a regular contributor, a starter, but I do think he's a guy who can make a team and make people happy. Tough Borland signed with the Minnesota-Vikings. I'll be interested to see how his talents translate to the NFL. Obviously, he was a guy who Ohio State fans got on a lot for a lack of athleticism and whatnot in the NFL. Jake Hausman, the tight end, signed with the Detroit Lions. Never was really able to turn into even Luke Farrell type. Just didn't have as many reps. Got passed up on the depth chart by Jeremy Ruckert. So, I'll be interested to see if he sticks around with the Lions. And then kicker and punter Blake with the Tennessee Titans and Drew Crisman going home to the Cincinnati Bengals. So, those guys are, move around a lot, those positions, but, a lot of times you get the opportunity early on as a rookie being a kicker, a punter. So it'll be interesting to see what their role is for those 2 teams.
Yeah, it seems like 2/3 of the NFL teams on a yearly basis, and because the accuracy bar in the NFL is so high, if you miss a couple of kicks, you better hit 85% of your kicks pretty much these days, or man, we'll grab the next 23-year-old that's out on the waiver wire and give him a shot for a few games. So those opportunities definitely do exist. And again, as you know, Pat, I don't know where it is down the list of drafts selections in terms of rounds, but at a certain point, it's almost better that you don't get drafted and then you receive the 8 to 10 phone calls and you can weigh your options and look at rosters and opportunities and pick your own landing spot as opposed to being in a situation that may not be the best for you.
Yeah, and you see it a lot, I think, and not a lot, but you see undrafted free agents. I would be willing to bet on rosters because of the fit, stick around longer than maybe 6th, 7th round guys. Now that's not always the case. Sometimes it works out and, you always hope it works out for guys, but definitely late in the draft, I think being able to pick your spot, even though you don't hear your name called, can oftentimes work out a little bit better for your career.
People point to injuries being the major factor why NFL careers only last 2.5 or 3 years. And I know that has a lot to do with it, but rarely do people take this into consideration. We just had 260 players drafted. 75 or 80% of them are going to make rosters. Then you've got all these undrafted guys, and a number of them are going to make rosters. You're supplanting in a league with 50 some players, 53 per team, 32 teams, about 1,600 players. Regardless of the injuries, you're supplanting like 400 or 500 of them right out of the gate.
Right.
So that has more to do with it than the injuries, in just regards to, hey, we've got a cheaper option here, and he's also younger and ready to go. And so it's a difficult thing keeping a roster spot in the NFL. Pat, we appreciate you stopping by as always, and everybody join Pat's work at Bucknuts 247 Sports.
All right. Thanks for having me.